Hello, welcome to This Week in Politics. Well, here we are. We are 2 weeks after the Vegas massacre, and we have been debating for 2 weeks. The FBI has been debating for 2 weeks, trying to figure out when Jesus Campo got shot. Unbelievable. And the story's changed 3 times. Now, supposedly, those casinos have got cameras all over the place. Supposedly, we have eyewitnesses of when he was shot, where he was found, and the FBI cannot seem to figure out when or where he was shot. They don't even know where he was shot. I'm going to go down and we're going to look at the follow-up on the Vegas massacre. And I want to end this segment with some of the proof that we should be concentrating on. And I want you to keep this in mind as we continue to talk about the FBI. This is the same FBI that cleared 30,000 emails on Hillary Clinton in 1 week. And in 2 weeks, we can't decide when this guy was shot. We can't look at 5 days worth of videos in 2 weeks, but yet they can clear out 30,000 emails. I'll be honest with you. I've never been a conspiracy theorist, but this investigation, even from the outside, stinks to high heaven. And we're going to go through here and take a look at some things that I would like to see and the American people would like to understand, and the FBI cannot seem to get off of when Jose Campo was shot. It seems to me they're more worried about being sued in lawsuits than they are of getting to the truth about who killed these people. At this point, the last program I did when we talked about the Vegas massacre, I said that there was at least around 6 shooters. And I was willing to go with that, and I still am. But one thing I'm definitely not in for now, I'm not even convinced this guy even shot a gun, this Steve Paddock. I'm just not convinced he did. I think he was more, I don't even think he was a participant. I think he was just a patsy. They needed his room and they killed him to take it. Now there are some disturbing things. If what the FBI is trying to feed us is true, that this Stephen Paddock did all that shooting from his room, one gun, one gunman, that's what they're trying to sell us. If that's true, there should be anywhere from 1,200 to 1,600 casings from high caliber rifles, which means each one is going to be, decent size. So you take 1,600 of those, there should be a pile. Now, some people will say, well, they could be outside. The only way that could be is if he hung the gun out the window. If all he did was stick the muzzle out the window, those bullet casings shot back into the room, and there should have been all over the place. Now, when you look at the pictures of the floor where he was found, there might be a couple of dozen shell casings, and some of those, I believe there was 2 of them that I saw, were on top of the blood. Now think about that. If he shot, got done, then decided to kill himself, the blood would be on top of the bullets, right? What happened is he shot, bleeds, and then bullets fall into the blood. How did that happen? It's not even possible. And where are all of the bullet casings? We know that there was that many shots fired because we have 58 people dead, 500 injured. That's minimum 600, and that's if every single one of those bullets hit. Where are the bullets? Where are the casings? Simple questions like that have not been answered by the FBI or the Las Vegas Police Department. We also know there was a guy by the name of Joe Napoli, and he was at the concert, and he saw bullets or bullet casings on the ground in the venue. That is not possible with a one-shooter scenario. That means there was a shooter on the ground in the venue. Now, he said he couldn't tell if it was a bullet or a casing because he doesn't know anything about guns. Okay, that's fair. But it doesn't matter, either one. How did it get there? How did those bullets get on the ground in the venue if there was no shooter? That's impossible. There had to be a shooter on the ground in the venue. This whole issue about Jose Campo, they can't decide if he got shot 6 minutes before the shooting started, or 40 seconds before the shooting started, or 5 minutes after the shooting started. My issue is with this issue, why are we concentrating on the minutia? Let's take pictures of the crime scene and tell the American people how many bullet casings there are. If there's 30 or 40, then we know there's other shooters in other areas. The investigation is being really run poorly. And I'm going to get to the news conferences in a minute. Another issue that I had with the follow-up to this investigation this week is the sheriff is giving a weekly update, not daily. Now you think about that for a second. With any other national emergency, whether it's a hurricane or 9/11, or there wasn't press conferences daily, there was press conferences hourly. And when we get to the list of all of the proof and all of the material they have to go together, they should be having a ton of information coming out every day. And he's holding a press conference, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about the press conferences. First off, this sheriff is an ass. Pardon my language, but he's an ass. He's just rude. He doesn't answer the questions accurately. He took 2 or 3 softball questions, the first one I saw, and he didn't like the questions he was getting. So the second one, now listen to what he did. He told all the press the day they were going to have the press conference, so they all knew it was going to be on a Friday. But he gave a 1-hour heads up, like he put it on their Twitter page. If he put it on at noon, he said press conference is at 1 o'clock. Now, I've been following a couple of the independent investigators on this thing, and to get across town in an hour in Vegas can be challenging. But when they got there, they weren't allowed in. The only people that were allowed in were mainstream media, who's not interested in answering questions, and they're basically shutting this whole thing down. And in the press conference, he took no questions. There was no questions asked. Now, what kind of an investigator, what kind of sheriff, what kind of FBI holds a press conference and doesn't take questions? So afterwards, the independent people, not the mainstream media, but the independent people, went to the sheriff's people who were public information officers and tried to ask them questions, and they were asses. They showed it live on the feed where the Independent was asking the PIO there, and they were just rude. Told him to get out of the building, stop asking questions. There's not going to be any answers. You're not getting any answers. It's just odd. The whole press, and then the FBI guy stands in an intimidating amount of space between the sheriff. He's almost hovering over his left shoulder in both press conferences. Now, in most press conferences that I've seen, it's customary for people to stand behind whoever the lead speaker is. And it's a nonverbal form of communication saying, we stand behind whatever he's saying. This guy is standing on his left shoulder so that he is visible in the periphery, and he's close enough that it's kind of creepy to the sheriff. It is the oddest setup. It's the oddest arrangement. It's the oddest form of press conference. It's the oddest. Everything is odd about this thing. And the information and the minutia that they're concentrating on is disgusting. It's disturbing, is what it is. It's very disturbing. Here's another thing that I've noticed. I have been trying to stay current on the information. I've been searching out videos and stories. Google is taking down videos, particularly from independent investigators. The newspapers and the magazines, I mean, less than 5 days after this thing happened, I looked through a newspaper and there was one little article buried in the middle of the paper that took about 2 inches in one column on this massacre. And that's it. I mean, there has been an absolute crackdown. And I'm assuming from the FBI, but I can't prove that. But somebody with a lot of power is absolutely stopping stories from going out. And not only are they keeping them out, they're taking them off of the internet. So if you see something out there that you better screen save it, because chances are it's not going to last up there very long. Another interesting thing, and again, I'm going to compare it to the Hillary Clinton thing. When the FBI had any information, the FBI held the press conference, not the senators, not the committees, but the FBI. Here we got the largest mass murder in American history, and the FBI has not held one press conference. Not one. And they're supposedly in charge of this investigation. Not one press conference. They haven't answered one question. They haven't presented one piece of evidence. I don't understand why. If you're running the investigation, you better be providing information. Now, Mandalay Bay had some type of a program where you could become a life member, and this Steve Paddock was that. I don't understand how it works or what it's about. But here's a couple of things that Mandalay Bay has done that we know has done. It eliminated every single record that Steve Paddock had about his history, his reservations, how many times he stayed there, what room he had. That has all been eliminated from their computer system. The FBI doesn't have access to that anymore. How is that not criminal? And that's not all. The Jesus Campos, who was supposedly a security guard. Now in Vegas, in order to be a security guard, you have to be registered with the state. This guy's not registered. And according to somebody in the Mandalay Bay Hotel, he'd only been working there a day or two. That's awfully coincidental. And again, I want to know how come that is not criminal. How is it that Mandalay Bay, which by the way is owned by MGM, how is that hotel not criminally negligent for hiring that guy without registering him with the state, first off? And secondly, how is it not being held criminally in charge by destroying evidence that the FBI would probably need? How is that legal? How are they getting away with that? Another thing that has come out, and this is, there have been videos out there. There was confirmed talk on the police radio that you can hear. And there have been videos from other hotels. We now know, even though the FBI refuses to acknowledge this, but we know this from personal videos and from personal accounts. There were bullet casings and gunshots and glass broken at 3 hotels, the Bellagio, the Area, and Mandalay Bay, that we know of. And there's a rumor that there was one in the Flamingo, but nobody's been able to prove or verify that one. But they found bullet casings. So as we go down our list, just our little list here, we know that there's been bullet casings found in the room at the Mandalay Bay, at the venue where the concert was held, at the Bellagio, at the Aria. So we know there's 4. Now remember, I said there was at least 6 shooters. Well, there's 4 right there. And here's something that nobody's talking about. If you remember the scenario that I painted last week, in order for everybody to get out of there and nobody to get caught, which is the assumption I went on based on the information, and I still stick with that, that each person, and let me run over the scenario that I painted. There was at least 2, maybe 3 people in the room at Mandalay Bay. They did their shooting, they turned around, shot Steve Pollock in the mouth. He fell. They did a second round of shooting. After that was done, they packed their guns, cleaned up the crime scene, and they left. And they faded into the background. And on a set timing, while they're escaping, to make it look like there was one shooter held up in one room, somebody else from another floor or on the ground or somewhere on a cue shot again. Now everybody that's listening thinks it's from the same place. It's definitely the same weapon, and it's definitely being shot the same way to give the appearance of one shooter. He does his, packs his up, walks out, and a set time, another one does it, and off they go. Now I went through and counted. There was 11 different outbursts of automatic fire, and each one lasted about 10 seconds, and each one, it varied, but they were about 30 or 40, 50 seconds between outbursts. In order for that to happen, the execution of that evidently was flawless, because nobody got shot, nobody got caught. That is a sign of military training and discipline. For 5 or 6 different people to time their shooting and to get away without getting caught is it smells of military precision. They had maximum kill time. They had concentrated amount of time to get it done. They got a patsy shot, and they had an hour to get away after all of the shooting and killing was done, and they got away safely. Now, there was an airport over there. Did they get into the airport? Did they drive down to another city, get in the airport? Who knows? We're never going to know. They did not secure the scene at the airport. Who knows? But if you consider the fact that the people that actually did the shooting had military training or military type training, that narrows the list down. And for those of you that think that I'm a conspiracy theorist, I'm not. In fact, I don't want this to be true. But I know one thing. After looking at that picture of him being dead in that room, one thing I do know is all of that shooting did not come from that room. There's no possible way that happened. No way. Now, I said earlier that there was a gentleman named Joe Napoli that found bullet casings at the venue. You can watch him on a show that I watch called Crowdsourcing the Truth. And they do probably a video a day. And he interviews different people, and it's an interesting program. It's on YouTube called Crowdsourcing the Truth. Go over there and watch it, and particularly watch the interview with Joe Napoli. He does a couple of them. This guy is telling the truth. I would believe him 100 times over the sheriff, over the FBI. He is a very credible witness. Now, this whole thing with Jose Campo, the supposed security guard, which he, in my opinion, was not a security guard. Depending on who did this job, and it's looking more and more like a inside either CIA or FBI job, he's probably one of those. And here's what happened this week with this guy. Now, supposedly, now I want you to think about this. This guy gets shot in the foot. Now, supposedly, they shot 200 rounds out the door, which, by the way, I saw the door. I didn't see bullet holes in the door. But anyway, assuming he shot 200 rounds at him down a narrow hallway, and he gets shot one time in the foot. Okay, whatever. Let's assume that's true. So, and he's been in the hospital. If you're shot in the foot, you're conscious, you're able to talk. So the FBI and the sheriff's department has had 2 weeks to this guy, and they can't get this event straight. I mean, that should have taken 10 minutes. You walk in, you say, what happened? Where were you? What time? 10 minutes, you should have the whole story. And we're 2 weeks in, and they can't determine when this guy was shot. So anyway, he gets out of the hospital, and they set up 5 interviews for him to do on a certain night, and I don't remember what night. Let's just say Wednesday. He has 5 interviews set to do, one right after the other. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. He goes to wherever the place is they're going to do the interviews. The guy that's with him goes out to get the first press. They come back, and Jose Campo is gone. And nobody knows where he's at. They went to his house. He's not there. Now, if you got shot in the foot, you're not getting around too well. There's a very low possibility that he walked or ran away. He's probably on crutches if he actually got shot. So that means somebody had to usher him out of that building and out the back door so nobody saw him. Now, who would do that? Would ISIS do that? I don't think so. Would the sheriff's department do that? Probably not. Would the FBI do that? Very likely. Especially since the FBI can't get this guy's story straight. If they can't get it straight, that means they're putting somebody up there for an interview and they don't know what's going to come out of his mouth. They can't allow that to happen, so this guy's disappeared. It was the independent investigators that found that he's not registered with the state. That didn't come from the mainstream media. That did not come from the Las Vegas Police Department. And here's another interesting thing. The day that he did not go, that he disappeared and nobody could, that day, there was an independent investigator named Laura Loomer, I believe is her name. And she did a video. She went to the guy's house, knocked on the door. A minute later, here comes a security guy. And he's wearing a shirt that says, I don't know, ABC Security, whatever the name of it was. And he's, he's being kind, but he's letting them know that, you can't be here. You know that. So she turns on him and says, we checked out the security company of ABC, and they haven't had a license to operate since January. And what they do have looks to be just on a computer website. Does your company actually exist? And he said, no comment. So we got a security company that's not a security company guarding a security guard who's not a security guard. Who would do that? Would ISIS do that? I don't think so. Would the Las Vegas Police Department do that? Based on what I've seen, they're not smart enough to do this. Would the FBI do this? Absolutely. That's how they do these. That's how they do a program. They everywhere you look, it's smoke and mirrors. You look for the security company, they don't exist. You look for a security guard, can't interview him. You want to try to find out specific information, it vanishes. You want to know his registration information at the hotel, it vanishes off of the internet. MGM deletes it all. And by the time the FBI gets around to doing some actual investigating, guess what? All of that information is going to be disappeared. The chain of evidence is going to be broken. It will have been misplaced. This is just, this is a Laurel and Hardy routine. Now, I want to go over a list of evidence that I would like to see done. I want to know how come the FBI is not releasing some of these. How about the forensic report on all of the guns? There was 23 guns found in that Mandalay Bay hotel. A, have they even run the forensics? And if they did, why don't you tell us what the report was? Was one gun used, or 10 guns used, or no guns used? But tell us what the report says. We know there was an autopsy report, an autopsy done on this guy, because they said that they autopsied a part of his brain looking for some kind of mental illness that they didn't find. So we know that the autopsy was done. How about releasing the report? And here's an idea that the FBI should have learned from the JFK autopsy. How about if we get a second independent autopsy done before they rush? And I guarantee you they are going to have this guy's body cremated. You watch. That way they can't go back and verify anything. Now here's a very easy thing to do that has not been done. How about releasing the 500 names of the people that were injured so independent people could go talk to them and get their story? Let us see with our own eyes the injuries that were done. Let's let them give their story out. Hasn't been done. How about the names of the medical personnel that tended to the people, so we can get not only, I mean, theoretically, 500 people could be plants or actors. that the FBI has hired. Let's talk to the medical personnel that treated them. Give us the names of those people so we can go talk to them. Hasn't been done. If you think about a high-powered bullet hitting the concrete at the venue, how about showing us some pictures of where those bullets hit the concrete? Here's an interesting one. If they want to spend so much time talking about the minutia of this Jesus Campos being shot, and the story was, now, if you looked at the hallway, it's a narrow hallway. It's 150 feet, I think they said, from the doorway to the end. Now, if you shot 200 shots through a door, down a narrow hallway, there should be bullet holes all over the walls in that hallway. Show us some of those pictures. Go up and take video and show us the holes in the wall. And I want the forensics on those bullets too, to make sure that they match the forensics from the gun in the room. And make sure that they weren't put there afterwards. If there were over 500 people injured and 60 people killed in that venue, there should be blood all over that place. All over. How come I haven't seen pictures of that? How come nobody's taken video of the blood on the ground? Did the FBI go over and take pictures? Did the Las Vegas Police Department go take pictures? Because they rushed within a couple of hours of being on the scene that he was a lone gunman. If they determined that quickly, then they should have secured the scene at the venue and gone in to take pictures and started accumulating evidence immediately. How come I haven't seen any of those reports? How come there's been no pictures released? Casinos are notorious for having video cameras everywhere because of all of the money that is in those places. So they protect it with videos. How come we haven't seen one video from one camera anywhere in the hotel? How come? I mean, there's hundreds of cameras. And if he was there, depending on which story you want to hear, 3 days or 5 days, there should be video of him coming and going out of that room a minimum of 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Not to mention going out or gambling, or they said there's been video from other hotels where he went in that period of time and was gambling, but nothing has been shown. Now, I'm sure if you ask the FBI, they would say, well, we want to make sure that we go over it before we release it. So let me get this right. You can go over 30,000 emails in a week and release that, but you can't go over 5 days of videos in 2 weeks and release that. This stinks to high heaven. I want to have an explanation of this. From the time that he stopped shooting till the time the police go in the door, within a couple of minutes is 72 minutes. That's over an hour's time. Now, I want to know what happened. Now, the explanation that the Las Vegas sheriff gave was that they were following protocol by clearing out the rooms around there. Now, here's why I know that's a lie. If you look at a picture of that hallway, his room is at the end of the hallway and the door faces all the way down the hallway. Now, down this hallway is where this Jose Campos got shot. And by the way, remember, he had cameras at least one and probably two cameras out there on the food service cart. One was facing the door of the stairs and one was facing down the hallway. They shot Campos because they saw him on camera coming down the hallway, so they shot him. And that's the story the FBI is going with, okay? Now, how can you have the reverse logic where now you're sending your guys down the same hallway, opening these doors and ushering all of these people, putting them in harm's way because you don't know that shooter's dead yet, supposedly. And yet protocol says that you're supposed to bring these people out, usher them down the hallway where there's already been fire. And that's protocol? I don't believe that for a second. That they are trying to get both sides of the same coin using two different sets of logic in the same circumstance. And that is wrong. And even if that is right, I do not believe for a second that that is protocol. Protocol is to eliminate the threat immediately. And if you had SWAT teams, they should have gone in there, gone down the door, blown the door open, and handled what was in there. And that should have taken 10 minutes. Because SWAT was already there. Why the time lapse of 72 minutes? No explanation, except the lie that the sheriff told. I don't believe that for a second. The first story they told was that the door, that the guard went up there to invest. The first story was he was called up there because a smoke alarm went off, remember? Then they changed that and said, no, he went up there because there was a door open and it set off an alarm. The door that was set, the only door up there that could have been open was the door that went down the stairway, right? So this is the FBI story now. He came up to investigate an open door, okay? Now the new story is he came up to investigate. He couldn't get in the door because it was screwed shut. So then he had to go up to the next floor, get on the elevator, come down, and then go down the hallway. And that's when he got shot. Now, which is it? Was there an open door? And that's the only door that could have been open to set an alarm. Did that happen? Or was the door screwed shut? You can't have it both ways. Again, they're using reverse logic on the same problem, same circumstance. It makes absolutely no sense at all to me. I want to see a picture of that door. If it was screwed shut, there will be screw holes in that door. And if it was open and there's no screw holes, then the most recent story they're telling about the door not being able to be open, which was why he was up there in the first place, then that was a lie. But let me see a picture of that door, because one of those two is a lie. One of the unique things about hotels, casinos out there, is that they have exterior cameras all over the place to keep people from, again, climbing up the outside. There was a video camera right above the shooter's window. How come we haven't seen that? How come nobody has shown that video? And here's the really, really, really interesting thing. I have watched all the video I can get my hands on. I can't find one video that shows muzzle flash. Now, think about this. The room, whether it was light or dark doesn't matter, but the curtains in there were dark. It was dark outside, and you're shooting a high-power rifle in rapid succession out a window. There should be muzzle flash coming all over. That should be so bright that it would light up his face. if you got a close-up on it. I can't find, and that not just out of that window, but any window on there. Now, there was one video that the cab driver took where there looked like to be some flash coming. But if you look close at that video, it was on the 4th floor, I think. It could very easily have been a reflection from something else. It did not look like muzzle flash to me. But even if it was, that's on the 4th floor. Again, goes against everything the FBI is trying to tell us. How come out of all of the video, and there's a lot of video of that building at that side during the shooting, and I didn't see one where there was any muzzle flash, not one muzzle flash shot. That is impossible. How was there shot from anywhere in that building and no muzzle flash? Now, somebody said there's a thing that you can put on there that reduces it. Okay. It doesn't eliminate it. And if you ask guys, I'm not military trained, but if you ask military trained people and you're being shot at in the dark, you shoot at the muzzle flash. That's what you look for because it's obvious that you can see it. It's bright, and that's what you aim for. There was no muzzle flash. Now, if I've missed a video, if you've seen one, please send it to me. I would love to see that. And I've looked at the timing, and I've, because of the flash would be before the sound. I mean, I get all that. I have not seen one video of any muzzle flash. How is that possible? I want to hear copies of the 911 calls that were sent in. We know, again, this is the FBI story, we know there was at least one call sent into 911 when Campo got shot. There should have been 911 calls from the Bellagio and the Aria, and probably the Flamingo. How come those 911 calls have not been released? How come they haven't even been talked about? Nobody's talked about any of this proof I'm looking for, I'm asking for. Nobody's even mentioned. The FBI hasn't mentioned any of this. The Las Vegas Police Department hasn't mentioned any of this. Nobody's talking about the actual proof that should be there. The 911 calls, how is that if they release that tomorrow, how would that change the investigation? It's not. What it does, though, is if I'm right, it will prove that there was more than one gunman, and the FBI is not going to allow that out. Why? I have no idea. But the scenario they are trying to teach us or to get us to buy is the one shooter, lone wolf. And the 911 calls in that period of time will show that there were shooters at least 2 other hotels. And one of the videos, it's interesting. At the Aria, there was the lady that took a video came out, talked to a security guard, and was told to go back into the hotel. And she said, why? And he said, there is shooting at 3 hotels with 7 confirmed shooters. 7 confirmed shooters at 3 different hotels. You don't hear that. That would explain a lot. That would explain why there's hardly any casings up there. That scene in that room is doctored. It would explain that. It would explain why there was no muzzle flash. They had different shooters at different hotels. Each one was going to be a kill zone. And the only one that worked was the venue. I want to hear the 911 calls, and I want to hear them all from this time, from like 10 minutes before when Jesus Campos makes his call till 10:30 that night. Without editing, without changing, just give us that clip of tape and let us hear all the 911 calls. That's never going to happen. Here's another interesting thing that nobody's talking about. Steve Paddock's house, the FBI went in there, okay? A night or two later, the house gets broken into. Nobody's caught. And here's why that's an issue. Because now, anytime the FBI wants to pull that out as an excuse as to why there's no, as an example, let's say the proof comes out that he had a laptop. They say, well, that must have been stolen when they broke in. How is it that the FBI had a house, they went in there, went through it, and then left security off of it so that anybody could break in? The chain of evidence is destroyed. Nothing in that house can now be said to be undamaged. Anything found in that house now is not going to be used as evidence. It's impossible. You can't do that. What's the phrase they use? Some kind of tree where the evidence, if it comes from a certain kind of tree, the fruit that you get from it is no good. Unbelievable. At the very least, it's incompetence. In my part, it's from where I stand, it looks like just another one of those things that the FBI is going to pull out at a later date to explain why the evidence is gone. But if they went in there, let's get a complete inventory of everything that was in the room and the houses, a complete inventory. Something as simple as a laptop can be critical. How come we don't have that inventory? Did they take an inventory? We don't know. Nobody's asking. They're not taking questions. They're not offering up any information. We keep getting bits and snippets about this guy's life. When 911 happened, we had a complete history of all 7 of the guys that hit the thing. We had a complete history. We knew their name, where they were born, the country they came from, when they came here, when they went to school, the whole thing. I want a complete inventory. I want a complete history on this guy's employment. They say that he was an accountant for Lockheed. Okay, but I want to know when he started and when he quit. His complete history, where did he get the money to buy the property that he had? Because he sold it for $8 million down in Texas somewhere. Where did he get the money to buy it? And how long did he have to do it to sell? Where's the details? There's no detail. All we are given is just a thumb scratch. We don't have any dates of when he worked, when he bought the property, when he sold the property. Did he ever do work for the FBI or the CIA or any part of the government? How long has he not worked? We have none of that information, yet we had it on all of the terrorists at 9/11. Where is the video from the Bellagio and the Aria? We know for a fact that there was video shot at the Bellagio. I've seen the video. It was on the internet. We know that there was gunshot at the Bellagio. That is not open for debate. The Bellagio had to have video. Where is it? And if you watch the story of the lady that did that video, she does an interview with, again, I think it was Laura Loomer, but I won't, no, it was just a lady that contacted her. But they interviewed, and here's what she said. She said that after they went back to the room, she had done the video, done it live, actually. And so they went back to the room, came down the next day to check out, and she tells the lady behind the counter Are you giving discounts on the room for what happened last night? The lady says, hold on just a minute. The shift manager comes out and she asks her and she says, there was no shooting here last night. And instead of accepting that, she says, well, that's interesting, because if you look at the video that I posted live here from last night, the lady stopped her and said, hold on just a minute. She goes away, comes back a couple minutes and hands her a bill that has 0 on it, paid in full and done. And she says, thank you, have a nice day. So we know for a fact that there was a shooting at the Bellagio. And we know for a fact that the staff is trying to cover it up. The questions are, why? Where's the video? What's their motivation for keeping it quiet? And is it the Bellagio or the FBI that's keeping it quiet? Nobody's asking questions, and the FBI damn sure isn't answering any. They had a press conference with no questions taken. I've got an hour's worth of questions I'd like answers to. I've got a list of 30 pieces of evidence I'd like some answers to, and they're not taking questions. We know for a fact, because I saw it on the first day, that the Las Vegas Police Department had body cams on and they were all recording. Where's that video? And by the way, that's one of the videos taken down off of YouTube. All of the Las Vegas Police Department had body cams. Where is the video? They have no problem at all producing that video when it's Black Lives Matter. Everybody's got video when somebody gets shot, but the biggest mass murder in the United States history, and we can't get body cam video from the Las Vegas Police Department? This thing stinks to high heaven. Now I want to wrap this follow-up up. When this thing happened, I was all about getting to the truth. I am not a conspiracy theorist. All I did was put together a scenario based on the facts that were given, that I could see. Not that the FBI gave me, because those are not facts. In my opinion, as I sit here now 2 weeks in, this is a cover-up of some type. And I don't know what they're covering up. I don't know if they're covering up the FBI's involvement, the CIA's involvement, ISIS involvement. I don't know. But I know a cover-up when I see one. And I want you to remember some things as this goes forward. We are 2 weeks in, and all of this information that I have been talking about, these are just common sense questions. I'm not a brain surgeon, but just common sense things. And nobody's asking the questions of the FBI. Why aren't these guys going up and making those FBI agents' life miserable until they get answers? That's what a press should be doing. They should be harassing these guys until they get answers. I mean, how unreasonable is it to ask, is there forensics on the guns that were in the room? You had 23 guns. Have you run ballistics on them? That's a normal question, and nobody. Every time they try to ask that question, the press is ignoring them. The FBI, they're not answering questions. They just say no comment and move on. They have no commented for 2 weeks. We have no physical evidence or proof of anything. They have not released anything. How is that possible? Of all of the videos, of all of the reports, of all of the forensics, of all of the blood work that should have been done, of all of the photographs, and not one thing has been released. And they are not taking questions. I mean, how is that even legal? How can you have an investigation and hold 2 press conferences and not answer questions? All you're doing, all the FBI and the Las Vegas Police Department is doing, all they're doing is putting out their narrative, what they want to say, not what the evidence says, not what the proof says. If they were putting out what the proof says, they would be going down a list. One of the first things they would have said was, I mean, if you just took pictures of the room and if they would just release those pictures from the whole room, we could very easily see if there were 1,600 casings on the floor. But something as simple as that, they are not releasing because it doesn't fit their scenario. The picture that I saw, there was only a couple of dozen, and it was where he was shot. It was the foot of his body. That's where the majority of those casings should have been, and I saw a couple of dozen. And I don't even know that they were shot from there. As I said, they were on top of the blood. It looks like they were just thrown there. Did they run fingerprints on the bullets? And they got a picture of him wearing gloves. That's another one that came out recently. With him laying there on the ground, he was wearing, on his left hand, he was wearing a glove. And they said it because he had allergies. Fine, we'll release the video showing him coming in and out of his apartment, and let's see the glove on his hand. I don't believe that's true either. This whole thing stinks to high heaven. It is definitely a cover-up. You are watching the FBI fumble their way through a cover-up. That's what this is. I don't know who, what, when, where, why, or how it's a cover-up, but I know a cover-up when I see one, and this is it. All right. So I want to move off of the Vegas massacre. I'm probably going to follow up on this in a week or two, depending on the evidence that comes out. But right now, I'm extremely disappointed and saddened because the people that were injured, the people that were killed, their needs and wants are being totally misused and ignored here. They're not looking for justice. They're not looking for answers. They're looking to put out their narrative. And why that is, I have no idea. I have no idea why, but I know it's being done. Now, the next topic I want to talk about is the governor in Illinois, Bruce Rauner. Now, I live in Illinois. Illinois is definitely a blue state, and I'm sad about that. And it is strictly in control of all Democrats because of Cook County and East St. Louis. That's the only reason the state, all of the rest of the state is soundly Republican. But because of those two counties and the concentration of the population, the state is blue. Now, this last election, because of the ineptitude of the Democrats and the budget and just a whole series of circumstances, the Republican Bruce Rauner was elected narrowly, but he was elected governor. And he's tried to take on the Democrats, and he is a rhino. And I did not know that when he was elected. But every time push comes to shove, he gives in. And I'll give you an example. They put forth an education program for, a funding package for the schools in Illinois. And they were trying to find a way to do it more equitably. The way it's been done is the Chicago schools get more money because it's controlled by Democrats. So the funding method that they used always favored Chicago. So they put forth another one, and Governor Rauner said, I'm not signing any bill that gives the Chicago public schools a bailout. They were, and just as an example, let's say that they were asking for $1 billion. I don't know what it was. Let's say $1 billion. So they argue and fuss and fight, and it comes down to it. And they pass a budget where the Chicago schools gets more money than they originally asked for. And he passed it. And the excuse that he gave was, well, he got something in there for special schools, some type 600 exemptions or something. It was nothing. He got nothing in return, basically. The Chicago schools got more than they wanted in their bailout. The rest of the schools in the state are going to get basically the same. A complete failure. The budget. We have the worst budget deficit of any state in the union. It's now bigger than the one that they had out in California. And we went in this state for a year and a half with no budget because they would not agree. The governor wants fundamental changes before he signs a budget. The Democrats don't want that. So they had a standoff. Now, as long as the Republicans that are in the House and the Senate, as long as they stuck together, they could keep the Democrats from overriding a veto. And for a year and a half, Bruce Rauner managed to keep the Republicans in line. Then the abortion bill came up. And when the Republicans found out that he was considering signing it, then it was trying to herd cats. The Democrats saw it. They passed the budget. Rauner vetoed it. Some Republicans voted with the Democrats. They passed the budget. And here's again, he got nothing. The Democrats got the budget passed, plus they raised taxes 5%, which, if you're going to apply that towards a deficit, I hate it, but I understand it. But instead of that, they raised spending 5%. The net effect is going to be, we're just keep sinking. So they passed the budget, they raised the taxes, they raised the spending, and the state is still screwed. So then the abortion bill comes up. Now, in Illinois, we had a kind of a fallback bill on the books, and it went like this. If Roe v. Wade ever gets overturned, Illinois is going to make abortions legal in the state. That bill was on the books. They introduced a bill this time that said, if that happened, well, no, the bill now is, should Illinois pay for abortions on demand through Medicaid? As Republicans, we all think no, of course. We believe that abortion is illegal. It is wrong, it is against everything. It's murder. It's murdering babies. However, Rauner signed it. He now has okayed the state funding of abortions in the state of Illinois. The Illinois bond rating. Now, states fund, most states fund major projects and major cash outlays. They fund them by issuing bonds, and the bonds are paid over time, but you get the cash up front, kind of like going and getting a loan from the bank. The state's bank is bonds. They issue bonds. The interest rate that we have to pay on those, the state has to pay on those bonds, is determined by the rating that the state gets for handling their finances. If your state pays their bills on time, they have no deficit, they get a great rating. The interest they pay is very low. The state of Illinois, our bond rating is one step above junk rating, which means when they go to borrow money, they pay an outrageous amount of interest. And it's all because of the budget. They can't seem to stop spending the money. And Governor Rauner, before the budget was passed, he did the right thing. And he said, I'm not going to borrow any more money. That's not going to happen. The budget passes. First thing he does is go and borrows money. I am sad to now, in all of the shows that I do, I have been trying to pound this home. The Republican and Democratic Party as we know it is dead. We now have establishment and Tea Party, because the establishment Republicans and the establishment Democrats, hardly a dime's worth of difference. And here's a good example. Bruce Rauner is an establishment rhino. his voting record, the things he's done in 2 years he's been in office, he may as well be a Democrat. But because he is a Republican, he is an establishment Republican. He is no conservative, which he talked like a conservative when he went in. He's no conservative. He's an establishment Republican. When he signed the state funding for abortions, the press trots out Dick Durbin. And I find this extremely interesting. I joined I did a couple of shows a couple of years ago when Durbin was running for re-election to the Senate. And for those of you that don't know, Dick Durbin has been in the Senate for a long time. He is a left-wing liberal Democrat. And as he was running, I paid close attention to all of his interviews, all of his press. And here's what I noticed. Not one time in a press conference, in a debate, in an interview for a newspaper, not one time was Durbin asked about abortion. Not once. And I kept saying, why not? Now, one of the shows I did was called Dump Durbin. And there are many reasons to dump Durbin. One of them is his stand on abortion. And the press gave him a free pass all the way through the election cycle. Never was he asked about abortion. He spent the majority of his time in Chicago and East St. Louis, and a little bit of time here in Springfield, and the rest of the time he didn't even bother to campaign. I want to know how come and now here it is 2 years in. See, he's got 4 years now before he has to run for election again. So now the press trots him out and, ask his opinion on what do you think about Rauner signing the bill, and, why do you think he did it? And now all of a sudden the press wants Durbin's input on abortion, but 2 years ago, nobody bothered to ask. So from this point forward, I'm going to continue with my dump Durbin, and now we're going to remove Rauner. And I'm going to concentrate on that on this show, and I do a couple other shows. I'm going to do it on those as well. Dump Durbin, remove Rauner. If you're in Illinois, remember those. Remember that. If you're not in Illinois and election time comes up, for Rauner, we need to find a Tea Party candidate in the primary that will take this man out. Dump Durbin, remove Rauner. Well, those are the two topics I wanted to talk about on This Week in Politics. Now, what I'd like to do at the end, so that we can always connect dots, is I'd like to talk about some of the current events that are going on, so that when we look back over time, like in a couple of years, when we say, well, I remember the massacre in Vegas. I wonder what else was going on at that time that didn't get covered. And there's three things that happened this time. This one, and I said a couple of years ago, well, about 10 years ago, I stopped being in support of the Girl Scouts because the Japanese bought them. They're not even American owned anymore. And then a couple of years ago, when the Boy Scouts started allowing gay leaders to lead the Scouts, I stopped supporting them. And now the Boy Scouts, here's the headline: Boy Scouts will allow girls to join ranks. This is just another one of the social experiments done by the left-wing liberals to eliminate masculinity. We're going to put the boys and girls in the same Scouts. We don't want the boys to be all boys. We want them to have little feminine details too. Should be Boy Scouts, and they should have heterosexual male leaders, in my opinion. Girl Scouts should have Girl Scout leaders, heterosexual female leaders. My daughter was in the Girl Scouts a couple of years ago when she was in high school, and her leader was a man, and I knew the guy. He was a creep. This is wrong. But that's what's going on this week. Boy Scouts will allow girls to join ranks. Also this week, now here's another interesting thing. The fires keep California under siege. The press, remember I said earlier that the press has just completely shut down on the Vegas massacre. No coverage at all. The fires, and we're in fire season out in California, and it's not uncommon, but these fires are really savage. I mean, they're doing a lot of damage, and it's all, everything they say is true. It is unusual, but they're getting headlines every day. You know, we're about a week and a half into this. The fires are still going, and they're still getting headlines, and not one peep about the Vegas massacre. But also this week in current affairs, the California fires are making the headlines, and California is under siege, and a lot of neighborhoods are being destroyed by those forest fires. And the last one, which is just, in my opinion, is just payback for the Democrats. The headline is Sanctimony Bites Weinstein Democrats. Harvey Weinstein, who led a film group, used to be Miramax, and now it's Harvey Weinstein Film Company or something. But anyway, it comes out now that for 30 years he's been abusing women, actresses, you know, the old casting couch. And he's been using his power and position to intimidate. He's paid off 7 or 8 of them. But now they're coming out, and the funny part about it is this: when you look at the ones that we know of, they're all Democrats that are abusing women, and these are supposed to be the ones for women's rights, right? You got Bill Cosby, Bill Clinton, Harvey Weinstein, Weiner, the representative that is married to Huma Abedin. I can't remember his first name. All Democrats. And yet they like to take this sanctimonious view of, you know, we're pro-women and we're pro-women's rights and equal rights and all of that. And yet every time one of these guys comes out that's been abusing women, they're all Democrats. So anyway, in this week for current events, Harvey Weinstein gets caught by a New York Times report abusing women, and he gets fired by the company that he started. Good old Democrats, you gotta love them. So that's the current events that I wanted to cover today. The follow-up on the Vegas massacre, and remove Rauner. Well, that's the program. That's about all I wanted to talk about. We'll see you back here next week for This Week